Seattle House Mafia.
All right. Our guest today started her DJ career in 2007 in Arizona prior to moving to Seattle in 2015. Best known for her melodic style in both her productions and her energetic DJ sets. She has releases on Uniting Souls Music, Feral One, Late Night Munchies, and Underscore, to name a few. She recently played Flammable as part of the Studio 44 takeover in December, right? And actually, the whole Seattle House Mafia crew caught your set basically destroying the dance floor at Monkey Loft last Saturday night alongside Drawbird and Dave Pesner. We want to give a warm Seattle House Mafia welcome to Amie Dabu, a.k.a. Snapdragon. How are you, Amie?
Hi, I'm super honored and really thankful to be here. Thanks for bringing me to your little cove and your little safe space. Super awesome.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming. Let's start with a little bit of history. Mm-hmm. I'm curious because you started DJing in 2007, right, in Arizona. Mm-hmm. What did that look like?
DJing, well, I feel not so special in the sense where I got my start in the rave scene.
Okay.
But 2007 was like an interesting moment in time where when I started, I was actually a vinyl purist.
Gotcha.
So I had acquired a ton of, well, actually, let me rewind. Back then,
Please.
I was playing, like, I was all about hardstyle, happy hardcore, which is like totally not anything that you would hear me play now, of course. But yeah, I'm not going to shy away from my roots. Snapdragon is actually, it derived from a rave name that was actually given to me by my original crew of friends that, you know, you kind of meet when you see each other regularly in underground house parties and warehouses. And yeah, I would say starting to DJ, it was self-taught. I didn't have YouTube or any of like the master classes that they have now. So
you and me both.
For sure. So it was really like getting the opportunity to play at after parties, where, you know, last minute, like, hey, we're going to gather around and get the decks together. Can you know, me with my crates, showing up. But, I didn't really start to make a name for myself until I started getting like the bookings at the raves. And,
okay.
And I was a undergrad student at Arizona State University, so it was known to be one hell of a party school. So I was also lucky to start getting gigs. I would say, well, at raves, but at the time I wasn't old enough to play at your conventional like clubs or anything like that until I got my bestie's fake ID. But I would say like I also started my first gigs at the what were they, like hookah lounges back when they were like a big thing, and that was like where the 18, 19, 20-year-olds, like we didn't really have a place to go. There weren't that many 18 and up club nights, so that was kind of where I started to have my niche and then kind of grow from there. And as I said, like got my bestie's fake ID and then started playing clubs at 19.
Okay. So you said, I was actually curious about the name Snapdragon.
Mm-hmm.
So you said you were gifted that name.
Yeah.
Was there a specific reason or reasons you were given that name, or is it just loving, you know?
Yeah. Like I've always been obsessed with flowers. So, and it's funny living in a place like Seattle, I've had a lot of friends that work in tech bring first dates, and then people would be like, oh, like Snapdragon, like the Qualcomm processor. And I'm like, no, I'm named after the flower, actually. If you're ever in Vashon Island, there's a Snapdragon cafe where you could like sit outside and sit amongst like a bunch of Snapdragon flowers, and I would highly recommend it if you're ever there. But yeah, it's funny listening to what other people like label you or say about you. And I'm definitely an analytical person, and that also translates to like the type of music that I guess, like, I just wanted to fast forward to like, releasing music. And whenever people ask like, well, what kind of music do you make? I always really felt uncomfortable about answering that question because I always feel like that would put myself in a box.
Sure.
So it's always been interesting listening to what record labels have labeled my tracks as when it gets released. And then I'm like, oh, okay, melodic house and melodic house and techno on Beatport. Got it. But back to like the whole naming like Snapdragon thing, it was just like listening to people say like, well, you're not conventional like a tulip or like a rose. So
Got it.
I think it was just like the Snapdragon thing just came up one really random late night in a warehouse. So
So you did the rave scene, the hookah lounge scene. You got and you started with, and I want to talk about your transition into kind of melodic house, but we'll get there in a second. But what brought you up to Seattle in 2015?
it was actually more of my drive to kickstart my like day job career. To be honest, in Arizona, I kind of felt like I had hit my glass ceiling as a DJ there, and I was having a lot of trouble trying to find a conventional job after I got my master's. So it was a really hard decision, but I did some market research and I was like, okay, who's hiring people with my skill set? And I looked at my bank account and I was like, okay, well, New York is out of the question. I guess it's either Seattle or I think I was narrowing it down to the Bay Area, and I decided to come up here on a leap of faith. And when I mean a leap of faith, like no job. I drove up to your driveway on my Juke, like literally everything that I could fit in my Juke at the time.
No way.
And I knew that I needed to leave Arizona, and all signs pointed to me coming to a place like the Pacific Northwest in Seattle. And to be honest, the only other time that I had been here was like one random trip I took with my best friend, maybe like 4 years prior, but we went to Portland.
Right.
So I was like doing a lot of research on like, what is the difference between Portland and Seattle? And now that I live here, obviously there's a lot, but I think it was like, I knew I needed to be close to water. Being from the desert, being surrounded by trees was like just a really attractive choice. Sustainability and like environmentalism is a huge thing of mine. It's one of the nerdy like bachelor degrees that I have in. So I figured like, why not come to Seattle and see where I could start to grow professionally. But
Got it.
Yeah, that was pretty much the journey here.
Gotcha. And so were you born in Arizona? That was the first time moving out of state, or you were born somewhere else?
I was born in the Philippines, actually.
Okay.
So first generation like in my family to actually be raised here. But I have a brother who's in Arizona. I would say he's like one of the first folks in my entire family. And being Filipino, when I say my family, like our extended family is our family. So I have some younger cousins that have been born here and have been raised here. But I think that that's kind of like the extent of like the immigrant family story, I guess. So, insert all of the stereotypes of like growing up in the really, really strict conservative household. And, I'm lucky that I had a dad that like understood why I needed to be dressed obnoxiously and a bunch of candy and going to like warehouse parties, because
the big Jenko pants.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I really was a candy kid, like up to here, like past my elbows, and all the neon that you can possibly imagine, so I'm not, not going to lie or, shy away from my roots, for sure.
So it sounds like your parents have come around a little bit on the DJ music thing.
For sure.
Okay.
I think they finally realized like it's not just this hobby. I think my dad for a while thought that it was like a phase that I was going through for like the social clout in college. But when he realized, like, after I moved to Seattle and I was telling him like, oh, I'm getting all these gigs up here in Seattle. And by the way, like, my dad's never seen me DJ live. So
No way.
that's still a thing.
Well, you're going to be able to send him this video at least. And
For sure.
yeah.
It'll be great. Yeah. See, Dad?
She's made it.
Yeah.
No, it's good. It's good. Okay. So you came to Seattle and I guess has the production thing, was that like hand in hand or was that something that started later?
Production has always been, when I first started DJing back in Arizona, there were a couple of, I would say that the DJs that I was hanging around with and partying with all the time, I was having to, like, as a tax of hanging out with them, I was in the studio, but I had no idea what they were doing. So I would be spending like countless hours pre-party, after hours in these like producer studios, and I would just be listening and not really understanding like what plugins they're putting in. Right. Like I was just seeing a lot of Logic and Reason, and I would say my interest didn't really like it's always kind of followed me, but it wasn't until about like 2019 here, pre-pandemic, I had found, what is now SEMPA, the Seattle Electronic Music Producer Association.
Got it.
But back then it was just a bunch of producers kind of every Tuesday, I think it was Tuesdays, gathering in like Jason Melton's like basement and, going over track feedback and learning like tutorials and stuff like that. But I actually kept a diary when I started my producer journey. And when I double checked, I think when I sat my ass down and was like, I'm actually going to capture this journey, take this seriously, and like really learn and get over the learning curve was, I think it was like October 2019.
Okay.
So,
not that long, though.
Not that long.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But I took, just like the pandemic has done a lot. Other DJs, myself included, we kind of got sucked into like the live stream.
For sure. Yeah.
Hype. And, kudos to all the DJs out there that have, and producers who are continuing to do that hustle. But
totally. It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. And I'm just like, credits where credits due, but like it's not something that I personally can't do. I would be happy to be a guest and hang out.
Listen, don't get me started. Like I've tried to make OBS work for me and we just do not. I'm sure people keep telling me it's easy, but I have the same experience. Like love to be a guest, but I'm not going to do the live. Paul's got a beautiful live stream setup. I'm not that guy. So believe me, I totally understand.
Totally. I think it's a different drive for sure, and a different hustle. And I just find that it's like, you have to pay attention to chat, and it's another, there's
little cartoon characters.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Bless you people for doing that. I know, I'm totally with you. No, I'm very much the same. Yeah. The production so the production thing's happening. I'm just trying to get the timeline a little bit here. I guess what I like to find out is, was there a specific event that just got you into dance music in general, right? Like, was there a foundational event, a moment, a song, a person, a something? Like for me, it was a rave that I went to and I had no idea what a rave was, and then I was like, holy shit, this is a whole new, was there a moment for you, or is it just something kind of slid into?
Well, I feel like electronic music has always been a part of me, or kind of found its way deep, into my heart, deeply seated since I was a kid. And just to nod to that, like electronic music for me was like, the way that I got introduced to it was growing up. I wasn't really allowed, as I said, like strict Asian parents. I was not allowed to go out and have sleepovers and all these types of things. And the approved list of activities was always things that I was able to do with my brother or my like guy cousins.
Okay.
And back then in Vegas, where I grew up, and where I'm from, where I would say like my hometown is back then in Chinatown, they used to have these like LAN places where you could like sit in front of a computer
Right.
and like play like Counter-Strike and all these like super nerdy
With a bunch
like,
of other...
yeah,
Okay.
totally. So the way that I got exposed was basically getting to hang out in these like internet cafes, and they were just playing like this like Euro trashy like Initial D type like driving like happy hardcore and like high energy trance.
So that's where the happy hardcore thing kind of
Totally.
started for you. Okay.
And I was also not allowed to really like one of the other activities that I was allowed to do was hang out in arcades. So like I took very like I was just obsessed with Dance Dance Revolution. So that was kind of how
Love it.
yeah. So honestly, like a lot of my initial friends, even before I found raves, like I had built friendships and relationships around putting that quarter on the Dance Dance Revolution machine and being like, it's my turn, or like, hey, do you want to like, you can keep up, like, should we do doubles together? So that was kind of like that. So when you ask that question, I think of like, okay, well, there's two moments for me. There's like that introduction into electronic music, but then for producing, I think I would say the moment that I knew that I had a knack for it and I should lean into it was in the pandemic. Hector Rodriguez, who runs underscore recordings, he was doing a remix contest through the Seattle Electronic Music Producers Association, and I just thought like, what the hell, I'll just join and get the stems, and you know, like I was just kind of I gravitated towards it because it was a means to finish a song by a deadline, and so I ended up like winning the remix contest.
Okay.
And I think that was like the gas I really needed, because I was up against other local producers that I like really looked up to and admired. Right. So when I like won first place, I was just like that, you know, starry-eyed moment. And, you know, I kind of got a lot of encouragement from, you know, other male producer counterparts. They're like, dude, like that was awesome. And
nice.
So that was where I started to kind of lean closer in and be like, I think there's something to this. I like that I can express myself in this medium that is this step above just DJing a set. And that's kind of led me to where I'm at now. And
okay.
Yeah.
And so you did that. This was there a conscious moment where you transitioned from kind of that harder, happy hardcore sound to the more melodic? I mean, there's still melodic in the trance and stuff like that. I get that, but, but like, was what transitioned you into a little bit slower, a little less, you know?
Yeah, I love that question, because I think anyone that's been a DJ or you know, produces DJ like content for a lot like years, you know, I think that your taste and your preference changes.
Totally.
And when I first moved to Seattle, you know, I knew that I had to start all over again as a DJ, and I had to really like understand, okay, well, what does Seattle want? What do people consider like as fire, like bangers and stuff like that? And when I first moved here, that was like, I think at the rise of like Dirty Bird Tech House and everything like that, right? So there was that compromise that I had to make where I had to start really getting, you know, like Seattle loves house music, and I actually had always loved house music, but when I was in Arizona, there wasn't really like a lot of places and a lot of gigs where I was really booked to play that sound. So I really leaned into that. But there was a working through the Studio 44 crew, there's this summer concept called Habitat.
Mm-hmm.
And that concept itself was, you know, as someone who just joined the team, it was a real challenge to be like, oh, so I have to put myself in this really specific box where it's all about the deep melodic and minimal sounds. And I found that through that challenge, I actually like loved it. And so at the time it really resonated with me as a person, kind of coming out of my 20s and into like my 30s, and really spoke to my soul. So I really felt like as I started to produce more music without giving myself any expectations around what genre it'll be, I've noticed that it'll just gravitate more towards melodic sounds. And I would say that that was what marked the start of this chapter, which is like me really swimming and owning this now apparently this attribute of mine,
right,
which is like this bitch knows like melodies and whatnot. So yeah.
No, it's interesting. We I don't want to break the world into two people, but I will for a second. But it's a little cliche. But I do find that there's people that their musical taste continues to evolve, whether they're DJs, producers, or just music lovers. And then you have the people that still listen to the shit that they listened to in high school, and like they're stuck. I worked a construction job for several summers. And these guys, I'm telling you, they're in their 40s, and we listened to 90s alt rock for like that was all they ever listened to, because that was the best time of their life, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. So I always think it's cool to see that evolution, and you can tell in people's productions, especially, but even in their DJ sets, like things
totally.
change.
Yeah, just the growth. Like, I mean, some of y'all don't know that I'm watching, but when I'm like really into your sets and I see that you're progressing and changing as an artist, like I see that.
It's super cool.
Yeah, totally.
Today, I just mentioned we saw you at the Monkey Loft, and I'll be honest, it was the first set. I've listened to some of your, I listened to a SoundCloud mix, I listened to some other stuff of yours, some of your original work, but the Monkey Loft was the first time seeing you actually play a set. And I was going to ask, is that a typical set? Or was that something you were playing to the crowd a little bit? Was it a combo? Or is that just kind of your signature sound? Curious.
Oh, gosh, that's a really, really good question, actually. I kind of overanalyzed a lot about how I was going to show up for that set on Saturday, because I was the only femme producer releasing on that release, so I wanted to really show up.
Yeah, tell us about the release too. I want to make sure, what was that?
Sure.
So the purpose of the party was an actual release. Okay.
So the purpose of the party, it was a Uniting Souls, Digging Deep party, and as general hype for the upcoming this upcoming Drawbird EP release. Drawbird has 2 tracks on there, one of which is a Toy Room, and then he had 3 technically, I wanted to say like 3 artists, but that's not true. Cause it's me, Dave Pesner, and then there's a 3rd remix that was remixed by Jordan Strong and No One. So I guess it's kind of like a duo collab there. Yeah. But I know that No One and Jordan Strong are not technically local, right. So as a way to hype the release, I was obviously super stoked to be part of the lineup. So again, and needless to say, I'm also a huge fan of Dave Pesner.
Me
too.
Totally. Yeah.
So there was like a little bit of like trying to be like, okay, well, there's going to be eyes on Pesner.
Yep.
So I just really overhyped myself. I was like, there's this opportunity to get more eyeballs on like my name. And so from a production standpoint, I was really like, we can talk more about this in a second, but like I actually redid that remix decidedly last minute. Like the version that's coming out now is completely different than the original version that I submitted. And the only reason for this, and thank you, Pesner, is I think Pesner was submitting his a little bit later. So when I was following up on notes that I was given for the release, I got an extra week, and I was like, you know what, I will take it. And I really knew that I wanted to make sure that when I released next to someone like Pesner, that it wasn't going to be like super duper lame sounding.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. And you said you wanted to. I want to make sure we don't skip over, but you wanted to talk more about specifically about that.
It's just more about, I guess, unless we wanted to talk like more into like more of the production side, but
we can talk about whatever you want. No, I mean,
I didn't answer your original question,
answer
which
that,
was
and then we're gonna
like,
go with that.
right, which your question was like, is that like your usual sound? Yes. Was I just playing to? It's interesting because whenever I show up as Snapdragon to a party that I'm supposed to play, like I'm extremely cognizant about the venue and the people that are showing up. So I never pre-plan my sets. Like it's never like okay, this is the song I'm going to start off with, and then this is like the track I'm going to end with. And I have some tracks that I'm like, I would love to have the opportunity to make sure I play it, but it just all kind of lives in this like super messy playlist that I just name for the sake of the gig. I like record box it, and then I just show up ready to go. Yep. And I'm, I get there early to just catch a vibe. The DJ before me like left me at 127, so I had to bring the energy back down before I brought it back up. But that's like for that purpose, I always try to make sure that I'm not sticking to that type of agenda or like pre-plan, because shit like that happens all the time. Sure. So I would say it's making sure that I could play at least one of my tracks, including the Drawbird remix that I assume that people are there to see me play. But it's also the time of night that I'm playing too. So when you're playing from 11:30 to about 1 a.m. at Monkey Loft on a Saturday, people are not there to just have a happy cocktail hour and like sulk and lounge vibes. Like, no. So I'm there to contribute any way I can. So I would say it was definitely more like playing to the crowd, but with my signature style, which is like all the sendy tracks that I play, I'm always thinking about how like my selfish preferences being on the dance floor, and thinking like, okay, if being this age, this demographic, and this type of mood, I always assume when people show up to a show on a Saturday night or on the weekends, hashtag weekend vibes, you're there to like let loose and forget about whatever it is you're facing. So I really try to lean into that and give myself permission to get sendy where appropriate. But knowing that Pesner was playing after me, I always wanted to maybe call it an old school DJ thing, but I always try to make sure it's the last couple of tracks are like this easy send for the next person that goes after me, so it's like nice and warmed up. But I might have been a little bit extra, as I was like, I'm gonna introduce you even though you probably don't need an introduction. So getting caught up in the moment as well.
No, I mean, you can do that two ways, and I've done both, where I've really screwed over the next DJ, and I've set them up proper, and it's happened to me too, right? Mm-hmm. Like you've walked into like, whoa, like they're playing peak hour stuff, and you're and it's a bit of a battle, but I do understand the going in with an idea, and truly, like, it was the same for me when I was playing out a lot. I'd go in with a loose plan and then usually abandon it after like 2 tracks.
Mm-hmm.
But that was fun. That's the way I like to do it.
So like when you decide to abandon it, like, what is the reason? Is it because is it because you're catching vibes from the dance floor? Is it adrenaline?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think catching vibes from the dance floor for sure. Like thinking this could work, but this will work kind of thing, and going through that. But still, and this is what I love about what you said, you're still being true to your sound. You're just making choices that fit that moment and that vibe and that time slot, and at the same time and this is what people don't understand. Like there's beyond choosing tracks or making tracks and building these playlists, like there is so much real-time decision making that happens when
Absolutely.
if you're a good DJ, right? And I do think sometimes that's the variable that can really separate the good from the great DJs, actually. And I think the great DJs do that, and they're willing to look at it, and they don't have that. I mean, you've seen these festival DJs which have these pre-planned, like, and they'll even play the same set sometimes in different festivals. Like, I cannot even imagine that.
Yes.
Personally.
I know.
I'd love the opportunity to try, but like, I couldn't imagine.
Right. Yeah. It's like what you said earlier about, like, especially larger known producers, or almost like even famous producers, and, you know, them being known or being caught, you know, playing sets that they've played, like, at, it's like, how in today's world, like, how would you, you know, it's only a matter of time before people catch on, right? Yeah.
I don't know.
And like, I think what you mentioned is another thing that I'm starting to see, this difference between the, like, older school, or like been there done that DJs, and then this like influx of new DJs that have either, you know, decided to hone their craft as a DJ during the pandemic, and now they're getting gigs. And like, I'm starting to see that these worlds collide now, because there's this you know, there's so much about DJ culture that I don't think that we talk about, which is like the DJ etiquette. Like, surprise, there is one. And
just a heads up.
Like, you can't just, you know, like, congrats on getting the DJ gig, but you can't necessarily just show up and just like play whatever the hell you want. Like, there's a lot of like you said, there's real-time decision making. There's also pre-planning.
For sure.
Like, we can't just haul crates of everything to gigs anymore. Like, there's like software and constraints that we have to go through. And I think it's interesting because, like, I know we were just talking about it a little bit before we started this interview, but, you know, talking about what we do for day jobs, you know, as a user experience researcher, I'm always constantly thinking about, like, how are people, you know, like, how are attendees, like, actually perceiving, like, the set that I'm playing, or like this set that I'm playing in the context of, like, these 4 sets that are part of the programming that night. You know what I mean?
No, that's a super interesting lens, right? And I made that connection earlier, but I'm glad you brought it up, because being a user, I mean, you're thinking about how a user interprets whatever it is you're putting in front of them, whether it's audio or visual or whatever. And so that does really translate well. It almost gives you a bit of an advantage, but it also could be, maybe my guess is, could be a little bit exhausting, a little fatiguing if you're constant, like, do you overthink a little bit?
I do all the time. Like, I can't turn that off. It's something that I've just learned to embrace, or, you know, cope when needed. But yeah, like, like in the Monkey Loft, you notice, like, there's not screens of, like, audio, like, visuals. So you don't have attendees just sitting there, like, getting to trip out on some cool visuals. So I really feel like the Monkey Loft is a really cool place where you could get heady and people can follow you there, because I think my hunch and my hypothesis is, like, it precisely because it lacks that visual element, unless you're, like, in the gallery, of course. But just being under the good old disco ball and just seeing swaths of people around you.
I mean, same thing with Flammable, right? Like, you have this purist dance music purist crowd, and what I love about those crowds is, and there was some of this at the Monkey Loft, maybe not quite as heavy as like Flammable, but when you switch a bass line, they cheer. You know, they're like, that, like, is goosebumpy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I've done Flammable once, like, years ago, and it was still one of my favorite gigs I've ever played.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's just like when you have that educated crowd.
Oh yes.
They're judging you, but at the same time, they're totally participating.
They're absolutely participating, and they're there to, like, they want you to take them on a journey. And those are the type of performances that I absolutely love.
Well, I was going to ask you, like, if we were to, you know, present, past, whatever, is there, like, one particular gig that's your favorite gig that you've played to date? And it may be a hard one to answer, or at least up there as one of your favorite gigs.
That's been up there. Okay. I feel like I should have prepared for this question.
No, it's all right.
But okay, to be honest, I'm shocked at myself for saying this, but I recently played an open to close set at Cherry at Kremwerk.
Yep.
I think it was like the beginning of this month.
Yeah.
And I was scared shitless because when you're responsible for open and close, like that, you are it. Like you do not have a promo team behind you. Like the outcome of the night is 100% dependent on your ability to promote yourself as an artist, tell people the event is happening, and then not only like attract people, like just even if you do get people that are like just foot traffic-y, like, you know, just keeping them there. Like there's, like you said, real-time decisions. Right. It was memorable for me because I was able to, number one, play a couple of my own tracks and got to see it like well received. But it was pivotal in me realizing, like, when I looked out in the audience, it was actually a much younger demographic and crowd than I had anticipated. And because of that, it had forced me to play and dig a little bit deeper in my USBs than I had like originally anticipated. But I was able to keep like a decent crowd all night, and I felt really proud of that because I've had other friends that have done the open and close thing and hasn't been like, as you know, it's always just been a really stressful experience, especially when you're just a local, you know, you're not like, I don't know, like you're not like Mala coming in for an open and close set, right? So but yeah, I think it was just like a confidence boost where I was like, okay, well, I know that if I could do an open and close set, what can I do if I go beyond the Seattle borders, or if I, you know, so it's just really gotten me like thinking on a meta level about like, well, if things are not as they seem now, then like let's explore this. Let's push boundaries right now, because that's kind of where I'm at in this post pandemic situation. So
for sure. No, that's interesting. And it makes sense, but it's an extra layer of stress, I think, having those really long sets. Mm-hmm. But it also gives you a lot of freedom to take it where you want to take it, as long as the crowd's on board, right?
Oh yeah.
You got to make sure they're coming with you. And I know we've talked a lot about positive stuff, and you can go as deep as you want in this or not, but you know, as you mentioned, you're a femme DJ producer. You make up a small group in this particular scene. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like there's different blockers than you've experienced, or than maybe the males experience in this scenario? Or I'm just really curious because, okay, so I'll preface this by saying there's two things. First thing, for the audience, I've never met you before, right? This is the very first time we've actually met.
We're getting real.
The second thing is this: you're the first femme artist that I brought into the studio, and we have more, you know, on deck, but I was just super excited to get somebody in here and talk a little bit about that. So, you know, again, as much or as little as you want, but I'm sure everybody's curious about kind of that experience.
100%. I don't know. There's like a lot of, like when you think about your journey as like just an artist or being able to like perform, you know, there's that ability to be noticed or even become noticed or taken seriously. So I'm just going to be super honest. I felt like I was going to parties for maybe about 2-3 years before I really felt like I was getting any. And when I mean like going to parties, it was like I was going there to like network, and like, you know, I struggle with like anxiety. So like even putting myself in front of people that I don't know, but it's like a needed part of the, you know, nightlife for, you know, people are not going to know who you are or book you unless they see you and know that you're real. Right. So I would say like getting over that hunch was a journey, but you know, now that I'm here and on the show, like it's great and awesome to finally be recognized and have homes, right? Like there's you know, I play regularly at the Monkey Loft. I can't necessarily say that a lot of femme artists who look like me can say the same thing.
Right.
And it's, you know, I would say that moving here from a place like Arizona, where I will say like most of my following are Latino or Latinx folks. So, you know, I was really used to looking out in the crowd and seeing a very diverse crowd. And if I could be completely honest, being here in Seattle, it's not completely the same way, right? I don't think that we're as diverse as we were, or like comparing my experiences looking at audiences in the Southwest. But you know, all I can say is I've been trying to actively pay attention to all of the femmes and theys and like transgender artists who are coming out and wanting to still, you know, express their art, or even just knowing that, you know, like for instance, I am a Uniting Souls resident, and this upcoming Pride, you know, Diggin' Deep has a monthly cadence at Monkey Loft, but for Pride, you know, Ramiro was like, hey, I really want, you know, you as residents to like what, you know, you have an open mic, like what should you do? And so Alex Legaspi, myself, and Emily Griffin, we were like, you know, we should use our slots either as a B2B to like bring up and put more eyeballs to like up and coming artists, or you know, and that type of thing. So I would like to say that, like, you know, this upcoming it's May. So next month, which is going to be Pride Month, I'm bringing up Khmer, which I actually saw her play at this community showing of this documentary called Underplayed. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I haven't, but I'll check it out.
But it's a great documentary, and I would say that it still speaks true to a lot of like the sexism and misogyny that us femme artists still encounter today. But Emily had this awesome event planned where it was like about I think it's like 1 or 2 hours of like socializing, and then there was actual film that we all piled into an actual theater and like watched the film, and then you know, had more of like the happy hour type networking afterwards. And it was at Hereafter, actually. It's like that side venue next to the Crocodile,
right? Okay.
Yeah, so that's where the venue was. But yeah, to be honest, like that casted a lot of questions around me. I'm like, oh wait, I am a statistic. Like this is still a thing that's happening, even though I know that I'm on the front lines. I'm the one that's playing, but you know, sometimes it does feel like I'm a little tokenized sometimes, because I look around the room, or whenever I see new lineups happen, like the first thing that I do is question, like, well, who's an AAPI artist? Like who's, you know, like, so yeah, like, you know, I'm just doing my part. I'm trying to lift up other femmes. I'm trying to also like actively form alliances and coalitions with other femmes in the scene. You know, I'm also trying to actually get more acquainted with other like femme centric platforms or even labels like outside of Seattle, and trying to figure out how can I, you know, one of my goals as an artist is to just like break outside of this glass ceiling that is Seattle, and that starts with networking with your peers outside of, you know, outside of your city and outside of your state. So, you know, fingers crossed that will only bring good things. But, you know, as my journey goes towards the outer, you know, outside of Seattle, as I would hope to achieve, you know, I'm always trying to make sure that I'm like bringing others with me and lifting others up, and, you know, whether that looks like giving feedback on tracks, or inviting people to my studio to just like you know, whether that be like help them transition from like a DJ controller to their first club gig,
Right.
you know, on CDJs,
For sure.
or like whatever I can do to help build that confidence. Because I think honestly, like being a femme producer and even just an artist, you feel, I walk into the room a lot feeling less than, and that's not like, I'm just being completely honest. And I always have to like tell myself like, no, like I worked just as hard, if not more, to be here, to like, I've earned my stripes. Like I care a lot about my craft, and, you know, like so whenever I show up to like gigs, like on Saturday, you know, even though I mentioned that I don't pre-plan sets, like even if I'm working with new tracks, because I started on the vinyl days,
Right.
So there's this comfort level of like, oh, I don't know if I feel comfortable playing this out in the club because I haven't heard it end to end yet.
Right.
So I still carry that like ritual with me. So like, you know, even on Saturday, I found myself like making sure I did like 30-minute warm-ups in my like studio to just make sure that I felt like,
Nice.
you know, kind of like how athletes, you know, they gotta like do their warm-up jogs or their like
You can
laps.
pull hamstring if you don't.
Yeah. Like you know, like every other person up there that's being hired to entertain, like maybe it's my Vegas roots, but like when I'm paid to be there on stage too, like I'm an entertainer. Like you paid me professionally to show up and be prepared. Like, you know, that means like not losing my headphones, like having multiple USBs ready to go in case one takes the shitter, like things like that, you know. So
no, that's helpful, and it is a good perspective for me. Like so a few things when we sort of plan who to invite to come in here, and this is a relatively new show, but trust me, there's like there's a long list and a short list of people we want to bring in. And I think a few of the elements that are super important to the whole Seattle House Mafia crew is, are they music lovers? And I know that sounds corny, but I cannot tell you how many DJs and performers I know that aren't necessarily music lovers that are doing.
I can't wrap my head around that, to
right?
be honest.
Thank you. Yeah. They're out there though. You know them, right? I mean,
yeah,
you've seen them. But the other part is, are they putting the work in? And not just putting the work in for themselves, but putting the work in and providing a platform. I mean, kind of what we're trying to do here is provide this platform to help elevate and to help magnify and help bring exposure to other people that we believe in, right?
Oh,
and
totally.
it sounds like you're doing the same thing, and you have a supportive crew that you're a part of. So it's super important to us too. Like if we don't necessarily want to bring people in here who aren't putting the work in, who we don't see who have that ethic. And I could tell, like, and my whole crew could tell, like when we were watching you on stage, you know, there was energy there. There were things happening. It was great. We had a blast. I mean, my wife, honestly, she's not like a dance music person, and I'm kind of glad. Like she didn't grow up in the scene.
Of course, right. Yeah.
So when she tells me she likes something, then I know it's, you know, I know it like makes me happy, because sometimes she's like, it all sounds the same. It's kind of,
oh, totally.
You know,
yeah.
So she's like, no, I really liked her set. I was like, okay, that's
oh wow,
good.
yeah. Like I really appreciated when you sent me that note as well. I'm like, I totally feel like you weren't just blowing smoke.
No.
Like it was like a real compliment.
I wouldn't have said it if it wasn't real. Yeah, for sure. So no.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that too, for sure. Like, just DJing as an art, you know, we all, you know, like, I know right now the whole thing about like AI and like, oh my gosh, AI is going to take our jobs. Like, no, like I absolutely like robots and AI will not take over a DJ's job. Let me tell you, like, because there's that energy exchange and there's that like, and to be honest, it's reciprocal. Like when I'm up there, like when I'm leaning in and then people are leaning in to like my set, it's 1000% a mutual like connection. Sure. Like you're here to escape reality. Like I'm here to escape reality with you. Like
you're not going to get that shit from a robot.
No,
at least for a few years, right?
At least like
totally. So I guess so. Two things I want to know about you before we jump into sort of future. What do you have hobbies outside of music? I mean, you sound pretty busy, right? With work and music and all that. Are there things you do outside of music that you're into?
Let's see. Pretty nerdy. So I will be playing a lot of Overwatch when I'm not.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah,
but...
sorry. It's it's an online like 5 versus 5 like yeah, multiplayer online game.
So you're a gamer.
Blizzard. Yeah, I guess.
Just
like
admit it.
Okay, if playing at least 10 to 10 plus hours a week constitutes being a gamer, then I guess I'm a gamer. But but yeah, I definitely do that as like a de-stressor because, you know, creativity is not a faucet that you can just turn on and on. At least for me. Yeah. So like when I've completed a track or I get a breather between DJ gigs, like I will definitely be leaning into the video games, or I read a ton of books, nonfiction. So I'm super not interesting in that sense. Like I'm a researcher, so like my brain is always on. So if I want to like read, I'm going to be reading books and nonfiction, especially like up-to-date research. I'm going to
put you on the spot. What was the last book that you just finished, or the book you just finished, or the last one maybe that made an impact? If you're that
okay, now we're getting into interesting territory because I'm actually trying to read up a lot on ADHD right now. Okay. So I was diagnosed back when I was like, this is way back when I was like 13 or 12, but you know, back then it was like, hey, you can't have like you have trouble paying attention and you're inattentive, so take these pills. And you know, by the way, it's like super old school, extremely old doctor, you know. For like sure. And so no one ever really like had that conversation about like, hey, you have an executive functioning disorder, and this is what this means for people like you navigating everyday life, right, such as like getting your homework done or like showing up for things like study groups. Like I didn't really embrace that until recently when I started to like take the plunge with like my mental health. Right. And you know, I did this before the pandemic, but you know, during the pandemic it's like even more of a reason to. But I've really, yeah, like the reason for that is, it's, to answer your question, it's this, Ron Sterling. He is actually this, he's retired now, but he's, he was a practicing, psychiatrist specializing in ADHD. And he wrote a book about demystifying ADHD, and so I'm kind of starting there before I kind of
we'll have to continue that conversation. I've done a lot of diving into that myself, actually.
Totally.
I was diagnosed as an adult, believe it or not, so it's pretty interesting.
Fun fact, ADHD is actually not a childhood diagnosis anymore, considering that I think it was like the average age of diagnosis now is like 31.
It's crazy. Yeah.
So yeah. And so as I'm kind of embracing existentialism right now, being, you know, it's been a long time since I've been looking for work as a researcher. I've been trying to turn my gifts towards like ADHD and like ADHD coaching. So I've been really thinking like, you know, mentoring people in music has been really one thing, and then like exploring what ADHD means from like from someone who's creative, and my well-being is inherently tied to getting projects done. Yep. It's been a really fascinating area for me, and I'm hoping that like one day I could like help people get through that, because I have a lot of like philosophies about helping people do more, especially creative types. Like for sure. Art, we need more art. We need more art, especially now. So
well, on that note, I think if we look at kind of future, I know you talked about getting out of the Seattle market and expanding your brand. Is there like big bold goals? You have certain things that you have like in your wallet, your purse, whatever, where you're just like, how are you checking a box? Or are you looking to accomplish certain things?
Yeah.
And are you hitting them? Are you on track?
Well, one of the things that one of my goals is to actually like finish an EP.
Nice.
And that is a challenge because I'm, my approach is to write them in singles form and then like seeing which ones like I could group together. But
Yep.
I'm trying to quarrel with that. Like, well, do I ship these out for compilation releases, or do I like really keep these close to my heart and release them as an EP? And then which EP, or like, does this EP sound appropriate for these, like, there's still that element of like being very emotionally tied to my music, and then like still making myself expect rejections like left and right, because I know that that's kind of the world that we live in when you're trying to ship your stuff out to labels. But I've been doing a lot of research, and considering I've been dealing with a ton of rejections already in the job market, I figured like, why not suscept myself to 50 more rejections from music labels, because like I'm kind of getting that thicker skin now.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of starting to get like unapologetic about who I am and what I bring to the table. So that's kind of where this is at right
No, it's amazing. I don't know if you saw Terry Jacinto's episode, but one of the things I was so naive about, I had assumed that like when a producer releases a track or has some success with a track, then like labels are chomping at the bit for the next track. And what I learned from Terry is like, it's a grind every fucking time. Like, and I was just, it was so enlightening to me, like how much work that is. So I have just like this whole new respect for people who are producing and shopping labels and doing all that stuff.
Totally. Like, I actually got a little bit of that insight from Dave Pesner.
Yeah.
Just because actually it was like weeks before last weekend's show. I was really thankful for him to like open up a studio and just kind of like show me and Miss Mindy the ropes, almost kind of like an unofficial like field visit. Like, and we were students.
So
we're
cool,
like,
though,
I
right?
know.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to take advantage of someone who's like, just like open to share their, like a piece of their brain. And, it was just that piece of it came where, he actually shared a little bit about, his touring days and being like at the epitome of like, the Drawbird fame, right? And it just kind of validated what I suspected, which is like, it's a grind, right? Like you have to be able to have all this music set up, and having released music myself, when you sign something, it might be in the moment for you and a reflection of like what you're going through. But when the public actually gets to purchase it, experience it, it might not be like 6+ months from then. And then when you think about that from like a touring artist perspective, or especially if you're like, in the financial grind, like I can only imagine like you're not seeing that money or that sales until like much later, which by the way, I don't do this for the money, but
No,
I don't think a lot of us do.
I don't know if you can.
Yeah, like I've thought about that too. I'm like, if I could continue to be unemployed right now and just make music, would I still be happy? And like the answer is yes.
Yeah. Wow.
I can just live off of ramen and keep giving you keep feeding you beats.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I want to get you behind the decks.
Oh yeah,
like
sure.
I've just like peppered you with questions.
No, I love it. Like, it's been a great experience.
Yeah, it's been great. And I'm, is before we let you loose, is there anything else that we missed that you want to bring up? And also including, I know you said you have some stuff for upcoming Pride. Any other shout outs, any new releases on the burner?
Yeah. Let's see, other than the Drawbird remix, that I have coming out on the Drawbird EP, it'll be out. Oh, I should have had this written down, but it's for sure going to be released end of next month. I think it's going to be out on like Beatport pre-order, and then like no later than like the 26th it'll be out in the public realm for purchase. I have a very close track that's near and dear to my heart that just signed the paperwork. It's going to be released through the upcoming Feral One
Nice.
compilation. So yeah, Denny Kindred's been like an amazing label boss for that, and
I've heard good things.
oh yes,
Yeah.
which I think you should bring them onto the show.
Cool.
And this song, actually, I'm not gonna play it tonight, but it's called I'm like blanking. I'm like, well, because I changed the track name last minute, but what is Closure Anyway? And a lot of my tracks actually have, when I look back at all of my releases, a lot of my tracks have really been like, when I think about when I've locked myself in the studio and I've spent late nights like grinding on them, I've really kind of been using it almost like I feel like a corny artist when I say this, but really, like, music is my diary.
Yep.
This original track of mine, every time I've had a rejection email or letter from those, like, this is it. This is gonna, like, I'm gonna fucking, like, I'm gonna move on from this chapter. I'm gonna be free from these, like, binds that constrain me, and then only to get like the thank you for your interest. We've decided to move on to other candidates. Right. And you know, and a lot of that has been like me spending countless hours getting ready and preparing, you know, as you know, for tech interviews are no joke. Especially with ADHD brain. Now I feel like I'm like going the extra mile, having to like write documentation per interview. But anyways, I'm really excited for y'all to hear it. I'm not sure when the compilation is going to come out, because I know that the demo submission is like finalizing or wrapping up right now. So, but I will say that it's very emotionally charged. It's definitely, if you're going through a period of time where you want answers and you're not getting them, and you're kind of living in this perpetual state of existentialism, then this track's for you.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like there's enough, just on looking at your song titles, like there's enough for you to come back in and we can talk about some of that stuff. So Shadow Work was one I have a question mark about, which we're going to leave that one. We're going to hang that one as a cliffhanger, because I want to talk about that for next time. And yeah, I really would love to just cut you loose on the decks. And I just want to ask if there's anything you want to say about what you're going to play tonight. Any plan? I think I have an idea, but yeah.
The plan is to have no plan other than at least playing one or two tracks of mine that are either going to be released, aka the Drawbird remix. Nice. And then we'll see. I mean, I have a lot of my tracks loaded, so we'll just see. Like, it's going to be kind of a mixture of tracks that have gotten me like really excited, you know, just the dance floor pleasers kind of thing, general feel good tracks. And then, yeah, like to your point, tracks with like the subliminal messaging around like what I'm going through at the moment. So
love it. Yeah. Well, good. Well, thank you for coming through.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now we're excited to get you on the mix, and yeah, we really appreciate the time.
Yeah. Well, this was an honor. Thank you for having me, and looking forward to just following the journey of the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know it's in its beginnings, so
it's in
really
its beginnings, but yeah, we appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me again.
All right.